Our Wrestling Podcast, back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious along with Jess, the Total Package, Craig, the British Bulldog, and Cuz, I think. No, maybe not. I don't know.
No.
Bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Can someone feed me today's topic?
David, we're doing the long-ass legacy of Lex Luger.
I love it.
All aboard the Lex Express, Dave.
Toot.
Full
For
steam
audio
ahead.
fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or Google Podcast, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at O.W.P 2019 or at Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. Guys, no messing around today. Jess gave me 7 pages to read, so we just need to jump right in. Look at him smiling. It's like torture. But look at
Go on.
Let's go on. All right, let's jump into the early life. Lawrence Wendell Fole? Am I saying that right? I hope
I've never known how to pronounce his last name. I really just wanted to put you on the spot and make you
There you go. Well, you done did it. Nice job. I was born on June 2nd of 1958 in Buffalo, New York. Luger attended high school and played football at Orchard Park, New York. He then attended Pennsylvania State University on a football scholarship, but transferred to the University of Miami after his freshman year when the Penn State coaches thought he could move to linebacker or defensive end. In 1978, Luger played for the Miami Hurricanes, which featured future Pro Football Hall of Famer quarterback Jim Kelly.
A lot of
4
Bills
Super
references
Bowls.
and Buffalo references so
Yeah,
far
there
early
you
on
go.
in Luger's
How
career.
many Super Bowls did they play? Greg, over there.
Well, I'm sorry. My headphone cut out. I couldn't.
Oh, man.
Played 4, lost 4.
Huh?
Son of
I
a-
can't even jump in on this right now
Scared.
because even though
So
Dallas has 5 rings, we lost last night, so I can't say shit.
Well, there you go. He was kicked off of the team, him being Luger, not Jim Kelly, for what Luger referred to as off-the-field incidents on the team's road trip to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech. Luger, who was suffering from cabin fever and disappointed.
Is that a diagnosis? Like, did a doctor diagnose him with
I
cabin
have
fever?
cabin fever.
I don't feel good. It must be cabin fever.
And he was disappointed at not being named a starter by coach Lou Saban by the 5th game of the season. He snapped and trashed his hotel room. Upon leaving Miami, he
That sounds
played
like
professional
Luger.
football.
Yeah.
That's a normal reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like no roids involved at all.
No.
Cabin fever, and he's kicking lamps over him.
But he did play professional football for the Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian
Sweats.
Football League. Semi-pro, that's what I would call it. He then signed with the Green Bay Packers of the National Football League, but never played in a game and thus is not listed on their all-time roster, though he did spend the entire 1982 season on the team's injured reserve list with a groin problem. Well, that's nice. In 1984, Luger finished his football career playing in the United States Football
After
League.
I passed 40, I'm starting to have a growing problem.
For the there you go. For
When you
the
get
Tampa
older,
Bay
it becomes-
Bandits, Memphis Showboats, and Jacksonville Bulls. I love all of these names. It's so fun.
I didn't realize he had such a storied kind of pro career. I thought he was just a college guy like all the rest of them, but I did not know any of this.
Why
about
is
Luger.
semi-pro coming into my mind right now? Everybody love everybody. He was a teammate of future WCW rival Ron Simmons while paying for the Tampa Bay Bandits. Early wrestling career from 85 to 87. In 1985, Luger met Bob Roop in a celebrity golfing event, of all things. In Florida, it was given the chance to get into professional wrestling as Roop. Oh, sorry, my stuff jumped there. It was greatly impressed with Luger's powerful bodybuilder physique. Roop
That's every
arranged-
story, by the way. Every 80s wrestler, when
Hey,
we
bro,
do a legacy,
you're looking big, bro.
it's always like they were at the gym and they got noticed by fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Like their massive physique. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Hey,
You should
Bob,
be a
I'm
professional
Larry
wrestler.
Pafol. I'd like to be a wrestler.
Well, you have a great physique, Larry.
I'd like
Come
to
on
keep my
aboard.
name Larry Pafol as my professional name.
So, Mr. Roop arranged for Luger to be
The
trained by
total
Hiro
package, Larry
Matsuda.
Pafol.
I feel bad for Hiro Matsuda a little bit, actually. Okay. Luger began wrestling in the Championship Wrestling from Florida, CWF territory of the National Wrestling Alliance, better known as the NWA. He was also in a steel cage match with Bruiser Brody. This is
Oh, so that was really early. That was must
I
have been his
just-
first year then?
Yeah,
Like,
this is
that
Dave's
incident with
favorite
Brody?
fucking thing.
I
ever.
love I love the video.
If you
on
ask
this.
Dave, like, and you put him under kind of like laughing gas or the dentist gas, you know, and be like, what's your favorite moment of pro wrestling? Don't think about it. He's like, the time that Brody fucking stopped selling for Luger and walked around the
It's
cage.
the greatest
and
thing
Luger
ever.
And Luger
'Cause
got scared and left.
He literally stops cooperating, leaving Luger to climb over the cage and disqualify himself, leaving the match. You gotta get some audio on that, Jess. A little bit of pictures.
I think I'm pretty sure there's clips online I can put right here.
It's fantastic. It's probably not owned either, so you might be able to actually play it. But it's good stuff. Let's get into Jim Crockett Promotions on the NWA WCW from 87 to 92. In 1987, Luger went to work for Jim Crockett Promotions and was under the NWA banner with the nickname The Total Package.
So can I say this?
Okay.
Joe and I have talked a lot about our favorite wrestling nicknames. I'm sure the three of us on this call have done the same thing at times.
Sure.
But Joe and I, under the influence, came to the conclusion that probably Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Perfect, and the Total Package are the three best.
I was wondering if
nicknames.
you're going to say Mr. Perfect in there.
Yeah, and right outside with the Hitman is a great nickname as well.
That's a great one, yeah.
Yeah, but Total Package was like, Joe and I were like, fuck yeah.
That's
like,
it.
We love the Total Package name. Like, that's just a great fucking nickname.
Yeah.
He wasn't. A lot of things. And I don't mean that to be a dick because we're doing a legacy on him, but
He
like,
was not the Total Package.
he
but-
was not a good technical wrestler. So if that
I mean,
package we're
Hitman
talking
should have
about.
been the Total Package. Bret
Yeah,
Hart.
the Total Package
so
Bret
funny.
Hart.
And he wasn't
Yeah.
a super great promo guy either.
The Hitman Lex Luger and the Total Package Bret Hart. That's fine. What's wrong with that?
Let's change it up.
So,
bro. Let's go back in time.
So just total
Mr.
package
Perfect
meaning
Paul
just his
Orndorff.
body, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In reference to the physique,
Yeah.
that is the Total Package, without
Yeah.
a doubt. That's fair.
That's
And he
funny.
began using the human torture rack as his finisher.
That's a great
He was first-
finisher.
It is a great finisher. If you're not a pussy about it. I don't know. He was first booked as an associate to Ric Flair's Four Horsemen stable until Orly Anderson was kicked out and he became an official member of the group. His first big feud was with Nikita Koloff, whom he defeated in the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship on July 11th, 1987.
Okay, so right here, I kind of want to pull this out. So, you know, Luger's taken a lot of heat over the years, especially during this period that he was green. And he was. However, if they come to you and they're like, man, you just look really good. And like, you know, people believe that you could beat them up and people believe that you could beat everybody else up and people want to be you. And we're going to put our second most valuable championship on you. What are you going to say?
I'm going to say, okay.
Yeah, in Luger's case, because Luger's about the money, Luger's probably like, well, how much more of an increase is that? And they're like, this much. And he's like, sounds good. I'll beat Nikita tomorrow. And like, why? I don't know why I sounded like Piper there. But like, why would you?
Yeah.
Like, Luger would be like, you know what? I'm a little too green for that. I'll pass. No, he's not going to say that. Like,
Who's going to
so
say
when-
no?
Yeah, when we want to shit on Luger, I'll jump on his bandwagon a little bit early here. Like, you know, I had my opinions of him at certain stages of his career. And if you're going to compare him to Ric Flair, but how many other people can you count on one hand, Dave, that can compare to Ric Flair? 2? 3?
Maybe.
I don't even think you could fill one hand of people that could actually compare with Ric Flair. So when people are like, well, he was no Ric Flair, so that's why he was held back here. I'm like, how many people back here were fucking Ric Flair besides Ric Flair? Like, come on, man. Like, you gotta, again, Luger saw the opening. Luger was about money. He knew he had a great physique. He knew that wrestling promoters, a guy noticed him in the gym because he was muscular. Luger wasn't lifting weights and then put someone in a fucking cross toe hold or whatever. And someone's like, wow, you are the total package. No, people saw him lifting weights and they're like, just get that guy. We'll teach him shit.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
we'll just get him in
87,
there.
88 Luger was huge. The first time you saw him, he was just impressive off the bat. And you knew
He was like
going
the
to be
Crockett answer to Hogan because Hogan was on the other side. And so were a lot of muscular guys in WWF at the time. But that was like NWA's like, okay,
Yeah.
like now we're going to, we pride ourselves on the wrestlers like Flair and Steamboat and et cetera, even though Steamboat had a great body. And so did Flair. But I mean, like they were more wrestlers. Aaron Anderson, Tully Blanchard, you know, Magnum. Magnum, again, was naturally tall, but he wasn't like mega muscular. Then you got a Luger walk in and they're like, we'll dip into the Hogan money if it's there. Why not? Like, you know,
We got to
we'll
give it a go.
I mean, they
Yeah.
vaulted him right to the Four Horsemen, vaulted him to Nikita, vaulted him, as Jess said, the second most important title, and it didn't matter. He just needed to clothesline the shit out of people, gut his punches, do some chain stuff
And
off
put him
the
up in the
ropes, and be
rack.
a monster, and put him in the rack. And then if
Yeah.
you could do that for 20 minutes a night, like, yeah, it was fine. Like I'm sure he was a dude that was never lacking for confidence, obviously, just reading off that football history and his ego and through the future. But like, it's impressive just to be vaulted in the main event and kind of still just survive and keep going
Yeah.
from there. Like, good for him.
I say.
And be one of those group of guys that you could put like him, Nash, probably Goldberg, like in this classification of like, they're like, you know, wrestling was cool, we liked it, but
Yeah.
you want to know what we liked more? Money.
Yeah.
And that's Luger was always kind of that guy. And you know, we could drop this in at any time, but Luger was actually known for being a really intelligent investor with his money in the back. Guys would come to Luger in both NWA, WCW, and WWE, and they would ask Luger for advice. Should I invest this? How should I invest that? And Luger was like smart with his money, and he was like, oh yeah, do this, do that. Like, you know, so Luger was actually very intelligent as well with his money.
He held the title until the first main event of Starrcade in November, when he dropped it to Dusty Rhodes in a steel cage match. This loss set the stage for Luger leaving the Four Horsemen, as manager Dylan's interference cost Luger the match. Luger then befriended Barry Windham. Well, that's fun. His former Florida ally.
Oh, that's fun.
And together they formed a tag team dubbed the Twin Towers.
Oh, what a fun group.
Yeah, that's nice. Their first match as a team was on February 3rd of 1988, a TV taping at the WTBS studios in Atlanta. On March 27th of 1998 at Clash of the Champions, they defeated Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. You know, we'll get to them later. The Brainbusters. Good God, so good. For the NWA World Tag Team Championship.
So a lot of people there, that was actually a big deal. And I remember reading about that in my magazines, my PWI magazines, when they won the tag titles. That place went nuts. The Clash of Champions 1 was commonly remembered for the Flair and Sting draw, and it kind of made Sting as a main eventer at that point.
Sure.
But also on that card was Luger and Windham defeating Anderson and Blanchard, and that place went fucking nuts. It's amazing. Like they were totally behind Luger and Windham at the time. Luger, that's the good thing about his physique, right? Like when he's a heel, he could be like, I'm so much better than you. I'm the total package. And you're like, fuck you. But then when he's a face, he's just like, oh, I'm going to beat all these other evil bad guys. Look at my body. And everyone's like, yeah. Like, and then you want to beat him. So he was kind of perfect from the start. You could switch Luger back and forth, and he was over here even early, like 3 years in, 2 years into the Crockett promotions. He was just fucking over his shit wherever he went. And it didn't hurt to have a partner like Windham who could fucking, you know, have a match with the broomstick.
The problem is, only a few weeks after the title win, Windham suddenly turned on Luger during a title defense.
Fuck!
Blanchard and Anderson, dang it, who had regained the title. As
I just complimented him. What happens on that is after Windham turned and Luger was a face,
he's officially out of the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, he's officially out. He challenged Ric Flair to the match at Great American Bash 88. And so he had Flair in the rack. And before, this is a lot of critique here for WCW in 88 because they started to kind of like decline a little bit. They pretty much telegraphed it. The Maryland State Athletic Commission will not allow any blood. So they telegraphed it. And so you're like, why would they tell me that? Yeah. And then you're thinking like, oh. And then at the end, and so when Luger cut himself, he didn't cut himself deep enough because he didn't go to the Flair school of bleeding. So basically, like the blood kind of wiped off. And so when he had Flair in the rack, the whole point was
that's hilarious.
Him to be pissing blood out of his face while he's got Flair up in the rack. And then the ref comes over and looks at his cut and rings the bell. And the crowd was supposed to think that Flair submit. But then they're like, due to the bleeding rule of the Athletic State Commission, Luger is, disqualified or whatever.
Honestly, to your point, Jess, if you hadn't announced it and even if you bled a little and you worked out, it would have been so much more heel work. Like
it looked
the crowd
like
would have lost their minds. It would have been great.
It looked like he was walking upstairs and he fell on lipstick on his forehead. That's what it looked like. Yeah, it was not good. So when the ref ended the match and said that Flair wins by forfeit because Luger bled and the Athletic, people were like, he's not even bleeding that bad. So unfortunately, this went over badly. But it was to put Luger in the main event, and he went after Flair, and so it kind of. And then he was also chasing Windham at this point, who was U.S. champion. So now, they were really positioning Luger as a face at this point is the most important story. However, sometimes WCW just gets in the way of itself.
WCW it up, bro.
WCW. So I apologize that I deleted a paragraph. And
hey, Jess, I think
I'm a real piece of shit.
I think it worked out better this way, honestly. Good stuff.
well.
Good storytelling.
He was in match with old foe Barry. You gave me confidence, Dave. I'm gonna.
There you go. He was then matched up against old foe Barry Windham at the Chi-Town Rumble in 1989, winning his second NWA United States Heavyweight Championship from him there.
Huge pop in Luger one.
That's what Hart's all about. He wants this title and wants it bad.
Into back suplex. Luger got his shoulder up. I think Luger got his shoulder up.
Yeah, from where I'm sitting, that's what it looked like to me. I think Barry Windham had his shoulders to the mat. I think we got a new champ.
The opponent has won the U.S. title. And Windham is attacking Luger.
What?
Huge pop in Luger one, by the way.
Oh yeah, massive, right?
One
They
of my
love
favorites.
him. They love him. With Sting and Flair set to square off at Wrestle War in February of 1990, Luger was booked to defend the U.S. title against Dr. Death Steve Williams on the card. A legitimate injury to Sting, however, caused the entire booking of the card to get completely changed. Luger was elevated to face Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. An injured Sting appeared in Luger's corner during the match, eventually being tackled by Ole and Art Anderson. When Luger left the ring to help Sting, he was counted out, giving the match to Flair. That sounds bad.
So,
but
and
it's
also in
kinda
between
keeps the
that,
storyline going.
in between the Great American Bash match where the match was stopped for bleeding, they rematched at Starrcade '88, and Flair would actually get a pin on Luger and like put his feet on the ropes, I think it was. And so that was supposed to kind of effectively take Luger out, and Sting was the next guy. Sting legitly tore his ACL trying to climb a fucking cage, setting up the match with Flair. So all of a sudden they're like, oh my God. So technically in the story, in the timeline thing, Sting was supposed to beat Flair before Warrior beat Hogan on the other side. That's what they were going for. Because they figured out that they were going with the Warrior. So they're like, well, we need to go with Sting so we can kind of like counter WWF. A lot of people were crowing around this time between like 88 and 90. They were saying that, you know what, like Luger should have been world champion. Like Flair prided himself, I've won it 100 times, which means you got to lose 100 times.
That's true.
So why not lose to Luger? Why didn't it happen? You know, a lot of people look back now, and it's to go back to the point what I said earlier. People, you know, Flair just saying, oh, Luger wasn't ready. Well, like when NWA sold, when Crockett sold to Turner, the territories were done. They were done before that. That's why the sale happened. But like Flair and them were still in that mindset of like 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 years before, where the NWA champion went to every territory and he had to be better than everybody and elevate their babyface or whoever it was.
Sure.
If they were a face, their heel.
Yeah.
You know, Luger couldn't do that. He was too green. He wasn't good enough. Well, right. But now you're in a different scenario. Now Turner was trying to put a bubble around his WCW, which we still knew as NWA at this point. And he was trying to compete with Vince, for better or for worse. So, you know, looking back, it's easy to say, why the fuck couldn't Luger have had a 3-month run or 4-month run with the title? It would have been good for him.
Too many hands in the cookie jar is the answer. But yeah.
And unfortunately, we're going to see when he finally does get the World Heavyweight Championship, it's anticlimactic. So for Luger, I always was like, God, he should have gotten a run. Like with back here when people still thought it was the NWA, even though we all know now what was happening behind the scenes and it was converting to WCW. You know, Luger was just used here as that face. They wanted to believe in him, but it was still infected, that company, with the best workers have to be the champions. That's it, man. And it's like, yeah, it took so long for people to finally catch on. You know, I would say, I don't know, about like 93, 94 when Bischoff took over. And he's like, well, listen, we kind of got to copy him to a certain extent. Like and Bischoff did things different. I'm going off on a tangent here. It sucks for Luger back here in like 88, 89. They didn't see it in him. But if the Bischoff administration would have been here, they would have been like, we're putting the title on Luger. Why would we not? Yeah. Like he looks just like Hogan, like in that sense. Like,
well, it did get worse for Luger as he eventually dropped the U.S. title to Stan Hansen at Halloween Havoc of 1989 of October of the same year. Luger's third title reign lasted a total of 523 days.
And I screwed up on that, by the way, Dave. That's Halloween Havoc 1990.
Oh my God.
That should have been. That's not your fault. It's mine. And I am a failure.
That's okay. It's totally fine. Totally fine. You're good. And his third title reign would last a total of 523 days.
That's a hell of a reign.
The longest reigning United States champion in history, he would win the title back from Hansen at Starrcade of 1990 in December.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner is once again United States Heavyweight Champion, the Total Package, Lex Luger.
In our archives, the history of the U.S. Championship, we do note that Luger was the longest reigning U.S. champion with a single reign.
Go check it out.
523.
Yeah, we do. We'll wait. Go check it out.
Yeah, we'll be
Well-
right here when you come back. Just pause it.
We'll wait
Luger
for
again
you and
began to
Cuz.
challenge Ric Flair for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship after becoming the #1 contender by defeating the Great Muta. So cool. In the June 14th, 1991 Clash of Champions 15. I had to read that, just, Roman numerals threw me off. Knoxville, USA. Luger's title match against Flair was set to be contested at the Great American Bash in a steel cage match, with the added stipulation that should Flair get disqualified, he would lose the title. The match never occurred, however, as Flair began to have disagreements with Jim Herd, the head of WCW, over his future and salary. Jim Herd is just a go-getter. What a great guy.
He wants to make the
quit-
monies, Dave.
He eventually quit the company, he being Flair, being stripped of the title in the process, and took that world title belt with him. And you guys have seen those.
It was a guy. Yeah, we've talked about the Flair leaving a whole thing, but
And
what
taking the
we
title
didn't
to
talk about was that
WWF.
Luger was kind of indirectly a part of it because he was supposed. The time that they're finally like, you're going to beat Flair. So the thing is that if Flair stayed, Luger was still going to win that match. Luger would have won the world title finally, like as a face here. They were going to put it on him. They had Sting, and then they were going to keep Luger as a face, and they eventually would have turned Luger because the duh match is Sting and Luger down the road when you look at WCW landscape. But with the whole Flair and Herd thing, and Flair finally getting quote unquote fired and not agreeing to drop the belt because he wanted his deposit back and blah blah blah. Then he shows up on Vince McMahon's television with the fucking NWA big gold belt. It was a mess. So Luger's finally gets his chance, finally gets a shot at the world title, and he was booked to win. And then Dave, you're gonna read on this no offense against Barry Windham, but just the shit fuckery circumstances, and
we all love us some Barry Windham. Let's be very clear on that.
Yeah.
But with the WCW World Heavyweight Championship now vacant, Barry Windham was declared the #2 contender and was set to face Luger in the cage match at the Great American Bash. During that match, Harley Race and Mr. Hughes came down to ringside. I don't know why I said that way, but it was fun. While Hughes kept Wyndham's attention, Race told Luger that now is the time.
Now's the time.
That's the best. It's the best Harley Race impression I have. To perform a pile driver on the distracted Wyndham, Luger did so, and he won the match, thereby winning his first WCW World Heavyweight Championship. As Flair still had the original championship belt, and the new belt was not ready in time, Luger literally wore the NWA Western States Heritage Championship, which had been altered to resemble the world title.
That is ridiculous.
That is insane.
Dusty Rhodes owned it. Dusty Rhodes owned that belt. So
The World States Heritage one?
Yeah, the Western States Heritage Championship. So he put it into the shop and said, just put a fucking plate over it that says WCW World Heavyweight Champion. So if
Make
you
sure
go back and
baby
watch,
when you do that. Just
baby,
put it over, baby.
the only thing I got is the Western States Championship. Is going to have to do. So he did it, and if you go back and watch it, Luger was careful. They told Luger not to face it towards the hard cam because they didn't want to focus in on it. So when he won it, he held it up and then tucked it because they didn't want people to
This
see
sounds
it. But
like the equivalent of someone in the family eating the big piece of chicken before daddy comes home. And just stitch it together and make a big one, sew it together.
this company,
This company.
That belt did
5
have
years-
like the western side of the U.S. on it. Like I can see it in my head. It says the Western
Yeah.
States, like literally like on the icon. Like
You've
you
watched
couldn't
this
fake it
match
if you
enough
wanted to. It
times.
was
You know
nothing
what you
like.
saw.
This company that we're talking about here, this company that allowed their world title to walk away to Vince McMahon's promotion, this company 5 years later would become the #1 American wrestling promotion in the United States.
Yeah, and Luger was just caught in the wrong time frame of it.
How do you
Yeah.
only have one big gold belt?
Because I put a $10,000 deposit on it. And then they're going to pay me my money. Like that's exactly why
It was
right there.
coming.
I mean,
And then her going, Luger, fuck you then. Fuck you. I got Luger. I got Elegante.
you
What
don't
else
have
do I
the
need?
balls to show it on television. Oh, yes, you do.
You wouldn't dare. What's on prime time?
Yeah. Telling Flair he doesn't have the balls to do something is, yeah.
You don't- I don't have no balls. Bobby Heenan, get Vince on the phone.
That's fine. Get
Woo!
the backup belt. Wait, we don't have a. What do you mean?
So
Like, what if
good.
he got lost
we
at the airport or like in baggage or like? So stupid.
Wow.
Western
So good.
States.
Okay. I can't.
Why
Every
was
time,
Vince
every
number
time
one?
Jess does Flair, I can't.
Why was Vince number one for so long? I don't know, because Vince probably had a backup belt. That's why. And among other things that Vince was really good at. I
Even when
wonder
they threw
why.
belts in the river, they had backup
Yeah,
belts.
they had
I mean,
fucking
come on.
shit on deck.
After Flair won the world title, his first major challenge came from Ron Simmons. This is in our archives too, by the way. We're very, very we're all Simmons fans. At a signing ceremony for their title match at Halloween Havoc and a 2 out of 3 falls match, there was a controversial angle where Luger invited Simmons, once the challenge had been turned back, to join his entourage and put I forgot about this. As a chauffeur. Luger then went on to retain the championship in a match by 2 falls to 1.
In WW. He's got him up, and he caught him in the attitude adjustment. That's the pile driver. And he got him.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the third and deciding fall, and still World Heavyweight Champion, the Total Page, Lex Luger!
Jim, this is what we are all about. A contest like this.
Eventually, Luger began to have his own
Another
issues.
good match. Again, the way he wins it is a clusterfuck. And then, there's a little controversy at the way they put Ron Simmons in. But you know what? Okay. I'm going to get a lot of flack for saying this, and this is the wrong thing to say. But I'm just thinking of, like, on professional wrestling standpoint. I'm just glad they got Simmons in the main event. Now, looking back, saying using race to do so is not the best thing to do. However, I'm talking back here in 1991. And whatever way that we got to see Ron Simmons in the main event, and then a year later he would actually win the world title and become the first major promotion black heavyweight champion. I'm glad we just got there. However, we had to go through some bullshit in the meantime. But their match,
bullshit.
Their match. You know what's bullshit about my dog Rowdy? Shut up. He knows every Friday I do the podcast. That son of a bitch dog.
He just wants to be a part of it. If you just put
He's
him
a
next to
massive
you,
Ron Simmons fan. He gets upset.
If you just
So,
want to put him next to you and hold him, he'll probably be all right. Just put his face on the
Barking at
screen.
nothing. I guarantee you, there's nothing.
He's
here.
barking at you because you're not paying
There's
attention.
a burglar behind me robbing my house. I'm like, there's nothing to be concerned about.
So you're saying Lex Luger is robbing your house right now? Is that?
No, I'm not talking about that at all.
But
But
Luger
Halloween
began-
Havoc 1991, 2 out of 3 falls match. Ron
Go
Simmons,
check it out. It's good.
First time in the main event picture. Luger had that stigma on him of the way he won the title, the Western States heritage,
Kinda
no
sucked for
backup
him.
belt, everything. This was actually a very good match. Probably the only good match on Halloween Havoc 1981. Go back and check it out. It's actually good. Very good.
Just the one. Just the one.
Just
But
the one.
eventually, Luger began to have his own issues in WCW, and the contract he had seemed to have him wrestling less and less while still collecting money. Luger's contract only required him to work a specific number of dates, and having fulfilled them, he sat out at the end of 1991 and the beginning of 1992. Luger did
Again,
not wrestle a match until Super
This
Bowl
same
II.
company 5 years later beat WWF, and I don't know how the fuck they did it.
But it's funny because Luger's like, look, I'm looking at my contract, and I've fulfilled my dates, so pay me.
and they're like, what? What?
but you
Heard's a what?
don't you want to be champion? Yeah.
And you would have
No.
to agree. This is where he would lose his WC title to Sting. I'm sure that's something to do with it. I'm sure it made it easier to put the title on Sting at that time.
Yeah, it's Super Brawl 2. Actually, entertaining. I wasn't a fan of the ending of this match, but it was actually a decent match. And you got your Luger and Sting, but Luger was, you could tell when he wrestled, he was half-assed because he was like, I'm out of here. Doesn't really fucking matter.
Pile driver, and Sting got him. Luger back to the ring.
Luger joined the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, with Bobby the Brain Heenan unveiling him
Oh, this is the
with the
best.
persona of the narcissist Lex Luger. At Royal Rumble of 1993, shortly thereafter, his name was altered slightly to just the Narcissist. Luger posed before full-length mirrors before every match. The WWF also incorporated his motorcycle accident into his gimmick, capitalizing the fact that he had a metal plate inserted into his forearm, which was also said to cause more damage when he struck an opponent.
You want to talk about Bobby
until my
Heenan.
dad walks in the room and like whenever my dad got an opportunity to tell me wrestling's fake, everybody knows that friend in their life or family member. You know it's fake, don't you? Like, and you're like, of course I know it's fake. God,
Yes,
like,
Dad, shut
Jesus.
up, Dad.
So my dad had to come into the room going, that would actually hurt him worse. And I'm like, oh God, like, because they would always talk about how Luger hit people with the forearm that has a steel plate. It would actually break their Luger skin and cause him way more pain. I'm like, okay, father, thank you for that. Can you go away and stop watching the TV that you own, please, and let me
Can you
nerd out and watch
GTFO?
wrestling?
Damn it,
Yeah,
Dad.
I can. Yeah, I can't. Can the
Dad,
14-year-old Jess
Dad,
please watch
come on,
wrestling
Dad.
in peace?
But I was
was
gonna
just sitting
say
here.
this.
He barely hit him on that.
Thanks,
Thank
Dad.
you,
Get out.
Dad. Thank you for that.
A real pile driver would kill him. All right, I know.
I know.
Craig, you're going to say something, bud.
So he throws a guy to the ropes and he runs into them.
Why would he
Yes.
do that?
Why? Dad, fuck. I don't know. Can you leave
Craig,
14-year-old
I'm going to
Jess
try
alone?
to bring you back in again. I'm sorry about this. But
You know, it's just tanning
all
oil
it's
they
like.
put on their bodies.
They don't look half that big. They just do a bunch of push-ups before and put baby oil. Okay, Dad. Why would you even say that?
What does
Dad?
that matter, Dad?
Just bothers me that he hits him with his forearm when it would clearly hurt himself. All right.
it's so stupid.
There's a long way around
Just
saying
leave
that,
it-
Dad.
It's stupid that you have to point it out. Like, just let us imagine.
My dad never said that comment the last one, though.
No,
That's true. He
I have to
knows.
defend him.
no. And I was pretending it was my dad too, who never said that either. But it's just an extension of the worst thing
Nobody's
the dads
dad
could say.
said that on this podcast.
Oh, it was 1993.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
People were wrong.
Dave, why are you dragging on? Read
Yeah.
the notes.
In the mid 1993 portion of time, after Hogan's departure from the company, Luger was transformed into a fan favorite character with the nicknames Made in the USA and the All-American, also American Original. I think Hacksaw's a little pissed off right now. On July 4th,
Hey!
he took part in an event where he arrived by helicopter on the
I've
day.
carried the flag for like fucking 5 years. He's just mad.
And
Tough
Flair came
time.
back into it. Flair's still there.
I mean, Luger's a
on the
great
deck
guy.
of the USS Intrepid and body slammed the near 600-pound WWF World Heavyweight Champion Yokozuna after a number of other athletes, both inside the WWF and out, attempted and failed. I think Hacksaw failed, so
Yeah.
he lost the
I
flag.
guess no
That's
one's
what
gonna
happened.
be arrested for stealing my gimmick.
Jess is calling Luger.
I guess
then-
nobody cares about a hacksaw. Been doing the same thing. Luger's gimmick's not new, fuckers. Sorry for my language.
I think hypothetically that if Yoko gave the jump, Hacksaw could have slammed him.
Look, my theme music is only Stars and Stripes Forever, assholes.
Oh, but Luger's gonna slam him? No problem, I guess. I'll just keep doing the same shit.
I'll just keep
Luger
having
did-
a baggage check my 2x4 every airport I go to.
Oh, it's never gonna
Oh, but
end.
maybe I can introduce him for SummerSlam 93. No Macho Man who has nothing to do with the flag? Okay. He could do it.
Luger began the Lex Express
I'm gonna
tour,
go to WCW if you don't fuck.
traveling the country in a red, white, and blue painted bus to greet fans in preparation for his shot
Okay,
at the
but I'm gonna set the
WWF
building on
World
fire.
Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam 1993. The match had a stipulation that his
I've had a flag painted on my car for you.
this match, world title, Yoko versus not Hacksaw.
I've worked every July 4th
Lex,
since
the
I was
title
20
of
years
this
old,
whole
but that's fine.
podcast. It's my fault. I blame myself for this.
So, okay. So if anybody's wondering like why a legacy on Lex Luger, just there's so much shit here. First of all, the Lex Express alone is really topic for discussion,
garbage.
right?
Yeah.
It is garbage, Dave. You're right, and it just fucking ended like a fart in church. But but Luger was a part of it, and that's a big part of WWF history. Was them trying to figure out like they were going to go with Brett, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, we could turn Luger face," and like it was just this whole weird in between Hogan stuff where Vince didn't want steroid guys on his show anymore. Luger was off the gas here, by the way. He was smaller, even though he was in great shape. He was in rip shape. But like, he's like, well, that's the next best thing I can have. I can't have the big bloated guys anymore because I'm kind of on trial for shit. So Lex Luger, who is not on the gas anymore, is in good shape still. He's 6'3", 6'4", 200 and even on his slimmest, 255, 60 pounds, big dude. Sure. So let's do that. So they were trying with Brett, and he's like, "No, let's do Luger. I need another Hogan." And Luger was a part of that. So a lot of people just forget. They look at it as a big failure, which it was. But like, think of the opportunity that Luger had here. Again, what are you going to say? No, thank you. I want you to give me arguably the most promotion you've ever given any single superstar, like besides Hogan in the company's history.
You're gonna get what you get. You're gonna take what.
I'll pass. Hacksaw, what are you doing? Oh, thank you. Finally. So yeah, the Lex Express here.
We said finally.
Finally, fuck! I've been waiting. I've been in the back of the bus the whole time, and nobody even knows in the bathroom. So yeah, and then they
working up a sweat. Sorry, I couldn't help.
They put him in this title match, and again, simply working up a sweat. In our archives, the UK Rampage tour. Yep. And this goes back. This reminds me also of the whole like the way NWA WCW treated him. Was like there should have been a time where he ran with the title, even if it was for a couple months and Yoko beats him back. Sure. You hype him up for months. He rides a goddamn bus with the American flag on it and literally has to live in it, like, and go around. And they do that to him. And then Vince is like, "Are you ready for the ending of the SummerSlam match?" "Yeah, go ahead, boss. You win by count out and you don't win the title." Oh, what the fuck was all this for then? Like, so you can't blame Luger for that. That was Vince. He just got cold feet, and he was just like, bro. Yeah. And it's like, so it's. We reviewed also in our archives the review of SummerSlam '93. We talked about they should have just pulled the fucking trigger and let him beat Yoko for a goddamn night. Even if the next night on Raw, like Luger loses, okay. Like, what's or the next pay-per-view or whatever? Like, what's the problem? What's the problem?
So. At this match, Luger, he uses the metal plate in his forearm. He eventually wins the match, but the count-out victory meant that Yoko would retain the title there.
Mr. Fuji! He's out! Fuji is out cold! And look out! Here comes Lex Luger! Yoko's at my feet! He is out cold! Come on, Yoko, get up! Yokozuna's out. Oh, he's on the good ship. Oh, wait a minute, Jim Cornette is over on the side. A man that's injured with a bad neck. And he deserves it. Luger's won it. Lex Luger's won the match. Lex Luger has won the match. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this bout as a result of a countdown, Lex Luger.
Luger participated in the Royal Rumble match of 1994, where he and Bret Hart were declared co-winners after both men went over the top rope and had their feet hit at the ground simultaneously. Magic with the cameras, as we'd say, but it was still very well done.
Yes.
As such, both received shots at the WWF World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 10. We've talked about this quite a bit. I just have to say that the Bret Hart side of this is so great, and the Lex Luger side of this is so terrible.
But I was a guy who could bench press almost 600 pounds and thought I was pretty strong. And he talk about just a huge guy with incredible natural strength. Sometimes when we'd be on house shows, we'd goof around a little bit at the beginning. He used to just, he could just take me and like pick me up like a little kid and set me in a turnbuckle like I was 3 years old. Amazing, amazingly big, strong, agile, athletic guy, and a great guy. Him and I were buddies. We used to play when we traveled Europe. They put us on the buses together. Him and I were card buddies, and we used to play cards all the time. Just a wonderful guy, Yokozuna.
Right.
Luger was disqualified in his match against Yokozuna, becoming the first man to win the Royal Rumble and not win their title match.
Wow.
Luger then began feuding with his friend Tatanka. His friend? I know they're friends. Oh,
They were best friends.
Oh, that's nice. Due to the lack of trust between them,
Stop
and a
it.
match between the two took place at SummerSlam of 1994. At the event, Tatanka defeated Luger and joined DiBiase's $1 million corporation. Tatanka has now been tainted. That's horrible. Luger would then team with Davey Boy Smith in early 1985 and challenge Yokozuna and Owen Hart for the WWF Tag Team Championship through the summer. They would be unsuccessful in their attempts.
We saw that live,
So-
like us in our storm.
Heck yeah.
That's right, we did. There's a lot of stories in there that we can't talk about. Shortly after SummerSlam in 1995, Luger, whose contract had expired, left the WWF without letting McMahon know beforehand. Jess, I know you have a lot to say here. Take it away.
This we're going to get into and again, we're talking about Lex Luger. Why would you do a legacy on Lex Luger? Because he was a part of a lot of big things that we already talked about.
A lot of big things.
And this one is literally what defined Nitro. The very first Nitro ever. Dave's going to read on here. Because Luger's contract expired, and back here it was more of a handshake. Now it's official contracts, and they have downsides, and they have no compete clauses, which no compete clauses were back here too, but not as common. Now they're in every contract nowadays.
Sure.
Luger's contract expired, and they fucking didn't realize it. They just thought that Luger would re-sign. So then Luger got a call from Bischoff, and Dave's going to read on. Read on, Dave, and then I'll go on.
Sure. In late August of 95, after expressing to Sting that he, being Luger, wanted to leave the WWF, Luger got a call from WCW Vice President Eric Bischoff to set up a meeting about a contract and Luger possibly, quote, jumping ship. Bischoff was initially reluctant to make the offer as he did not care for Luger, that's putting it nicely, personally or professionally, but relented due to both Sting's urging and the idea that his appearance would make a big splash. Bischoff offered Luger only $150,000 a year. This is 20% of what he was making when he left WCW 3 years earlier, in a deliberate attempt to make him turn it down. And
Only.
according to Bischoff, he would say, well, hey, Sting, I tried. But he was totally surprised that Luger would accept the offer of $150,000.
You got to give Luger a little bit of credit. He could have stayed in WWF and just been this fucking mid-card guy and worn the flag on his tights or whatever and probably made a little bit more money on a base. You know, maybe not much more money overall. But Bischoff is like, yeah, Sting, no problem. I'll call your buddy, who I don't like, and I'll make him an offer. Hey, I'll give you $150 a year, which is nothing. And like Luger's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
Bischoff, so if people want to shit on Bischoff, so he says, oh, he said, okay. His appearance on the first Nitro is going to be so important. Little did you know that when we saw Luger change wrestling history, when he walked down, it gave Nitro that, like, holy shit.
Oh,
like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
anybody could show up at any week kind of thing.
Yeah.
When Luger's wearing his little white, pretty dress shirt,
That's
he
so
was
sad. I
only
hate that shirt.
the whole time. I do too, because there was no collar. It was that whole phase where there was no collar
Uh-huh.
on the dress shirts. I hated that shit. So he comes down with his hands on his hips. Bischoff's like, "What? Don't shoot him. He doesn't work here. Don't do that." You, for a second, you were like, "What the fuck's happening?" I know nowadays nothing can be sold as real anymore because every angle has been explored. But I can't tell you, people who are listening,
It was cool.
all two of you, back here in 1995, when we first saw that, we bought in hook, line, and sinker. We're like, what is he doing there? He was just on WWF TV a week ago.
Yeah.
He was just
Yeah.
at SummerSlam pay-per-view 2 weeks ago. What the fuck? Then Dave will read on. He was at a house show for WWF the
Yeah.
night before.
He was literally, he premiered on Nitro of September 4th of 1995. That was just one day after wrestling his last match in WWF at a house show. He came out during the match
crazy.
for the U.S. Heavyweight Championship between Sting and Flair. This appearance sent shockwaves to the wrestling business and immediately branded Nitro as a must-see
so
television.
Bischoff, for $150,000 a year,
kind of changed the world.
Bischoff used Luger to set that precedent for
Yeah.
Nitro and change wrestling.
He got that
Like,
much in
it-
in PR alone that night for the next week.
Yeah, like, so
It's
if people are
insane.
like, Bischoff fucking sucks. Really? I can name you one thing that he did that was genius, and we just talked about it right now. Like, it's
Yeah.
insanity.
And he
did it
tried
for
like hell
$150
not to
or
make it happen.
$150,000 a year.
He tried, yeah, because of that 150 offer. He's like, I tried like hell not to make it happen. I didn't want him. I didn't want him,
but I ended up using him to kind of change everything.
He's not exactly wrong. I mean,
Right.
the talent, I mean, it's all spectacle before the bell rings, right? I
Yeah.
get Bischoff for saying that.
I'm telling you, I got a feeling that he ain't right.
You can have, listen, Macho Man, you can have your vote, but you're only one of 4 votes.
Okay, brother, you want him in, you want him out. I'm torn apart. But the way I look at War Games, when you put all the men in the we'll find out what everybody's made of, Luger. Would you be our partner, brother? We want to test you in War Games.
Yes. Well, tell him. Don't make a fool out of me. Don't embarrass us. Do it.
I'll step in there in War Games and I'll with you side by side, blow by blow. But one condition, I want that title shot down the line. You promised me.
There's some unfinished business here. He's got an ulterior motive. Get back to you.
You heard it, means you don't.
Saying that, you know, but it's
Well,
to your
Luger
point.
was known to be kind of a shithead sometimes, and like he was a not
He said,
nice. Yeah,
he said professionally and work wise, I
Yeah.
don't want him. So, in '96, as the NWO began to gain steam, Luger was a staple for the WCW side there. Luger won a 4 corners match and became the #1 contender for Hogan's WCW title at Spring Stampede, and teamed with his new ally, the Giant, to defeat Hogan and basketball star Dennis Rodman at the Bash of the Beach 1997. That sounds
up to that
bad,
point, the
but
biggest
this was
fucking
going off.
the biggest buy rate WCW ever got for a pay per view at that point. Up to that point was back.
When I
in
read
1997.
it sounds terrible, but people don't understand
Why
what's
why
happening
would we
there.
have a legacy on Lex Luger? On top of all the other shit I just mentioned, he was also in that match with Dennis Rodman. That's
You
crazy.
know, but people,
Like,
what people don't understand is that Dennis Rodman is a part of the Chicago Bulls at this time.
yes,
It's
world
basically
champion,
world champions going for a third, and he just
missing practice to
Yeah.
go for
Just
WCW.
He
leaves
literally
the
said,
team.
I need a vacation. And Phil Jackson, the head coach, like, how much you need? Like, I need a week. He was gone for like 3 weeks,
Yeah,
and he was doing this shit the whole time.
Yeah.
It blended so much real reality, not just reality TV, but reality into it. Like, what is Dennis Rodman doing here? Doesn't he have to go win a championship right now? And like you said, Luger's in the mix of all this stuff. It's phenomenal.
and you know what? And it's only fitting the guy that they used to kind of set the tone for Nitro. For 150,000. By the way, at this point, 97 was making a lot more than 150,000 a year. by
I
the way.
hope so.
Yeah, and Luger, I cannot understate how over he was. Now, as Jess the wrestling fan, I noticed a big decline in his work after the motorcycle accident. Obviously, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, like there was some times in WCW where I was like, I don't understand how he's so popular. He's so bad in the ring. He would clothesline people and clearly miss them by 6 inches. Like, and it was bad at times.
Somewhere someone told him,
But
that he
it
was
didn't.
too
It
snug.
didn't matter because, like, you're gonna read on too as well. He's also, even after the Rodman tag match, even after making history, debuting on Nitro, the first one ever, he fucking has probably one of the best top 5 moments in Nitro history.
On August 4th of 97 of Nitro, Luger defeated Hogan to win his second World Heavyweight Championship in an impromptu match before dropping that title back to Hogan just 5 days later at Road Wild.
It didn't matter. Him putting Hogan in the rack. So the match is going on. The place is sold out, going nuts. This is WCW's. They're at their zenith.
This
They're
is
fucking-
WCW.
Yeah,
winning,
they're stomping.
winning,
They're stomping
winning themselves back.
WWF at this point.
Yeah.
And so Luger, the guy who was the first guy to jump and make a big deal and blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
like is again involved in this, and like he like is fighting Hogan. All the NWO runs down. The fans groan. Oh, every week we see run-ins. Luger starts clotheslining them over the top rope one by one. The fans are like, huh? What? No, something's
What's
gonna happen.
happening?
He picks Hogan up in the rack. The place is cheering, but they're reserved because they're like, something's gonna happen. And then the ref turns around and signals for the bell, and the place goes goddamn bonkers. And
He smells it. He's gonna wreck it. They're standing in the trunk. Yes. He's got him in the rack. He's got him in the rack. Look at him tap out. Luger won the title. Luger won the title. Luger won the title. Luger's a champion. Luger's a champion. Luger defeats Hogan. incredibly, Lex Luger is the heavyweight champion of the world.
It is celebration time in the Motor City.
And Luger with that title going off the air was amazing. Like,
Yeah.
it was the first time that anybody had breached the NWO up to that point. It was before Sting beat Hogan. It was when Sting was still in the rafters.
It was WCW winning their title back from the NWO for the first time.
Yeah,
Right.
and even though it was only 5 days long, because Hogan won it back at the pay-per-view that weekend, it didn't matter. That moment on Nitro is one of the greatest Nitro moments ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ever.
After a long war with the NWO, Luger joined the NWO Wolfpack on May 25th of 1998. Luger played a central role in the group's war with Hogan's NWO Hollywood and even convinced the long-standing anti-NWO Sting to join them. On August 10th, 1998 episode of Nitro, he defeated Bret Hart to win his record-tying 5th and final United States Heavyweight Championship in an impromptu title match before dropping that title back to Bret Hart just one day later on Thunder. He would also take part in the incident which both NWO factions united against the dominant Bill Goldberg in January of 1999, the Finger Poke of Doom episode. I don't want to talk about it. He remained a member of the new NWO until he was sidelined with a legitimate bicep injury until August of 1999. He would remain a focal point of WCW until the company sold in 2001. Now we jump into the personal stuff. This gets a little rough. You got kids in the room. You might want to send them out. This doesn't get fun. On April 19th of 2003, Luger was involved in a domestic dispute with Miss Elizabeth Hulett, his then live-in girlfriend, in the garage of their townhouse in Marietta, Georgia, during which Luger struck her. Cobb County police found Hulett with 2 bruised eyes, a bump on her head, and a cut lip. Luger was charged with a misdemeanor count of battery and released on $2,500 bond. 2 days later, on April 21st, Luger was arrested for driving under the influence after rearing another car. According to the police report, Luger had slurred speech and bloodshot eyes. He could not locate his driver's license. Hulett was a passenger in the vehicle and was sent home in a taxi. That's how old this is. We don't have taxis, really. I would say sent home in an Uber, but not a taxi. Sorry. Luger was also driving with a suspended license for not appearing in court on March 5th of 2003 for a hearing on a previous offense of driving with expired tags and having no proof of insurance. This is why you need a manager. On May 1st of 2003, Elizabeth Hulett died in a townhouse they shared in Marietta after mixing pills of hydrocodone and alprazolam, which is Xanax, with vodka. Luger was arrested after a search of the residence revealed a number of illicit controlled substances. Oh gosh, including anabolic steroids, oxycodone, synthetic growth hormone, testosterone, and alprazolam. I got that right. He was charged with 13 felony counts of drug possession. He was released the following day on just under $30,000 bail. Miss Elizabeth's death was eventually ruled accidental. Luger pleaded guilty to the charge and was fined $1,000, sentenced to 5 years probation.
That's it.
In order to undergo periodic drug tests.
It's 2003 when his girlfriend overdosed on drugs and Lex called 9.
Lay down. I'm trying. I've been trying to help her. Lay down and check and see if she's breathing. Look at her chest. See if it's rising. Doesn't look like it is. I'm scared to death.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of stuff happening here. December 2005, Luger and fellow wrestlers Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell were removed from a flight to Winnipeg, Manitoba after committing acts of disturbance on board the plane and were detained for several hours. Although Steiner and Bagwell were freed to resume their trip, Luger was charged with violating his probation by failing to obtain permission to leave the country. Luger was initially detained in the Hennepin County Jail. He was tried in Georgia and sentenced to 4 months in Cobb County Jail with 1 month credit for time served. On October 19th of 2007, Luger suffered a nerve impingement on his neck that led to temporary paralysis. He underwent an intravenous antibiotic treatment and was expected to make a full recovery. Nearly a month after his spinal stroke, Luger was still in a quadriplegic state, having no movement in either his arms or his legs. In June of 2008, Luger was said to be able to stand on his own for short periods of time and walk using a walker. In 2010, Luger stated in an interview that he was unable to walk that he was able to walk more comfortably and now able to drive. By 2014, Luger was using a wheelchair on a regular basis, though he was still able to walk short distances, and by 2021 became completely reliant on a wheelchair for mobility. I don't know. There's a lot of things. I've seen the episode of Pawn Stars where he's pawning things off and giving it to charity, and I'm looking at Lex Luger, I'm like, I don't even recognize this guy. Using the cane and standing probably for the camera, but he's bound to a chair this entire time. Tough stuff. On November 28th of 2006, Luger appeared on Praise the Lord, a flagship talk program of the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and declared himself a born-again Christian. In an interview during it by the guest host, one-time wrestling tag team partner and longtime friend Sting, Luger emotionally discussed the downward turn of his career and personal life, including the events surrounding Miss Elizabeth's death and how it led to his conversion. Luger credits Steve Baskin, the pastor of Western Hill Baptist Church in Kennesaw, Georgia, with pulling him from a terminal tailspin. And we would argue now, I know we've talked about it several times, like, man, Luger was a jerk, but he's not a jerk anymore. He really does try to do right. However that gets you there is fine by me, but I don't know if you guys want to comment on that.
No, do the accomplishments. We'll talk about the closing.
Sounds good.
I want us to give our strong closing statement.
Championships and accomplishments. Jim Brockett Promotions, our World Championship Wrestling, WCW. He was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion 2 times, WCW World Television Champion twice. He was the NWA WCW United States Heavyweight Championship 5 times, the NWA Mid-Atlantic WCW World Tag Team Championships 3 times, one with Barry Windham, one with Sting, one with the Giant. And Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup, he won that in 88 with Sting. He is the second WCW Triple Crown champion.
And the Triple Crown is just like WWF's. It's the World Heavyweight, their secondary championship, which was the US, and the tag.
Yeah,
Luger was the second person ever to do that. And he was actually one of the only few people to also win the television championship with all that as well.
Yeah, he's really he's the quad, but they don't really count that.
Yeah.
Right? So, Pro Wrestling Illustrated says he had the comeback of the year in 1993. He had the feud of the year of 1987 with the Four Horsemen versus the Superpowers and the Road Warriors. Feud of the year in 1988 and 90 versus Ric Flair, so 2 separate years there. Match of the year in 1991 was Sting versus the Steiner Brothers at Super Bowl I.
Who is this? That shadow looked like Nikita Koloff. Telling you, that looked like Nikita Koloff.
Sting pushed his own partner out of the way. Koloff had that chain around his arm. He saved Luger from getting nailed, but Sting just got popped right in the face.
Brother, he got hammered right there. No.
That's it.
And ladies and gentlemen, the winners and still WCW World Tag.
Most popular wrestler of the year in 93, rookie of the year in 86, wrestler of the year in 97. Okay. Ranked number 2 of the top 500 singles wrestlers in the PWI 500 in 1991. Wow. Number 2. Okay. Ranked number 20 of the top 500 singles wrestlers in PWI in 2003 for all time. He was ranked number 52 and number 90 of the top 100 tag teams in the PWI years with Sting and Barry Windham, respectively, in 2003. In the World Wrestling Federation, he won the Royal Rumble with Bret Hart in a tie, and he was Wrestling Observer's Newsletter Most Improved Wrestler of 1989. There's a lot of stuff happening there.
Lex Luger is a I shouldn't say is a. Lex Luger did a lot more than people think. He deserves a lot more credit. He was in there with name me a wrestler that's a Hall of Famer that he was not in that ring with. Luger should be in the Hall of Fame. Will be soon. You can say what you want about him, and I had as a young guy growing up, you guys probably heard me going Luger.
Oh, you've said enough.
Damn. Yeah, like, Luger, God damn it, Luger. And I used to be so fucking mad at Luger, and especially during the NWO era, because I just thought his work was so poor. And, I was a big guy. I didn't mind limited movesets and stuff. And I loved Luger in like the late 80s when he would clothesline people and power slam people and put them in the rack, and he made it
really
look good.
do it, like really.
Yeah, he made it
really
look good, and he
snug
made
up.
it look snug and everything. And then he just, after that motorcycle accident, he wasn't the same. And the Jess back then wasn't as compassionate as he is now, as far as like, well, yeah, he's got a serious fucking motorcycle injury, shattered his arm and forearm, and could have never fucking wrestled again or lifted weights, and did. And instead of me recognizing that when I was a younger kid, I was like, his shit looks fake. So like, you live and learn. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this was because I'll go off first, on what I think of him. There's a lot of really talented people that held the WCW/NWA United States Championship. But to this day, when anybody mentions that title, his face is automatically in my head. Luger was like the U.S. champion that comes to mind. If anybody asked me, hey, right now, real quick, who comes to mind? WCW U.S. champion. I'd be like, Luger. Like, there's no, the longest 523 days or whatever it was. He held the title 5 times. He just makes me think of that. The Lex Express stuff, whatever you think about the end result of that, he was a part of that. The first ever guy who jumped ship and got Nitro off on, that leg of like, they're unpredictable. You got to watch Nitro. He was on the first Nitro. He quote unquote jumped ship. Vince didn't know. Vince had to change his whole, like, holy shit. We should probably sit down and review everyone's contract right now to make sure nobody else fucking
Well, you
does
can
it.
you can
Like,
argue
it's
that,
like,
that Luger is the reason for not only straightening out contracts, but for starting downside guarantees in the future.
well, and Hall and Nash would put a fucking exclamation point on the end of that sentence later too. And Luger was just such a part. His moment when he beat Hogan in the torture rack, that picture of him having Hulk Hogan in the torture rack, and however many people were in that sold out arena for Nitro going crazy for Luger,
holding their breath, waiting for it to be real.
Luger was so over, it was ridiculous. And like, whether I liked him at this point in time or not, it didn't matter. His look carried him through so much stuff. And yeah, he wasn't a very good guy. He, back then. And the stuff with Elizabeth and the domestic, violence and all that stuff is just terrible. But everybody that runs into him now, from Conrad Thompson, who's hired him for the StarCast stuff, to anybody else, is like, he is a different man. He is a good man. He is hell-bent on erasing his negative history. And just, when he tells stories now, he tells them honestly. He's like, look, yeah, I shouldn't have done this, and I should have done that. And for anything you can say negative about him, he has made it up now. When you're a public figure like he is, and you take on religion like he does as well, whether you believe in religion or not is irrelevant. He is trying to spread. He's trying to spread that positive vibe to people.
The religion, you can say yes or no, but he accounts for atonement.
Yes, and he wants people to take accountability for their sins, and he wants people to take accountability and be a good person. And if any one young person hears that now and sees what he's been through, and they're like, wow, and it causes them to change their trajectory in life, I say good on him. That's why I wanted to do this, because, and I follow him on Twitter too, and he will actually make fun of his wrestling ability when he's like, he'll post something that's silly, and he'll be like, oh yeah, it reminds me of me back in the day, and it's some uncoordinated person doing something. And so I think that, he's been through so much, man. And it's sad about Elizabeth. But honestly, like, people just like to, Luger killed her. No, he didn't. Like, stop it, people, stop it. They both were adults. They both were indulging in bad behavior. They both were druggies. Luger has to live with that for the rest of his life. And he probably, when he goes to sleep every night, thinks of her. And when he wakes up every morning, thinks of her. And that's his penance. He's gonna have to be haunted by that for the rest of his life.
Atonement, man.
Yeah,
Atonement.
him doing the positive stuff now and changing his life. And if he's affected one young person and put them back on the right course, he's done his job, man. Like, and that's what it's all about in life, is realizing the good and bad things you've done in life. And if you've affected people negatively, you got to recognize that. If you've affected people positively, you got to recognize that too. I think he's done both. And he did not fucking kill Miss Elizabeth. And all you conspiracy people out there who like to say that because it sounds cool to say, it sounds juicy or whatever.
Well, we're gonna get 1,000 hits on this one.
They were both adults, man. They were both adults. Yeah. And it is what it is, and it's sad. Yeah. And I miss Liz, and we did it in our archives. The Legacy of Miss Elizabeth is a great episode because we pay tribute to somebody who meant a lot to us as we grew up as well. And Luger loved her at one point, and she loved him. And no matter what they were involved in, no matter what drugs they were involved in, it was no matter how fucked up that relationship was, it didn't matter. Like, you know, and I believe he looks back on it now going, fuck, man, like it's probably one of the things that changed his life, you know, and like turned him around the other way. So I'm glad we did this. And that's what I say about Lex Luger. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Take us home, Craig.
Yeah. Well said, Jess. And I'll start now and work backwards just really quickly and put a button on it. But yeah, I mean, we talked about his atonement, and you want to talk about a guy who's kind of got punishment enough. Probably one of the most egotistical kind of guys in the business. Guy who thought and did everything kind of for himself and for money. A guy who had his entire kind of body and was the most perfect specimen. And I think that's why he was given the narcissist gimmick, because that's who he was, actually. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think he had a fantastic body for the entire 15 years he was kind of wrestling. But to imagine now to live and trapped in kind of the wheelchair that he is now and as frail as he is, like, I think he's already living kind of his own kind of worst like nightmare and making the best of it with his atonement and his conversion. So everyone can say what they want about his past, but I think he's paying for it now, and he's fully admitting it. And Jess is right. He's a different guy on Twitter. Like, I can't imagine what it's kind of like to be Lex Luger at this point. But and then I'll just say kind of, it absolutely deserves a legacy, absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And in those 15 years since 88, 87 to 2000 kind of won his main big crux, like that's a huge portion of the best of wrestling growing up. So whether it was the Monday Night Wars, he was there, whether it was like the rise of the NWA and the end of the NWA and Jim Crockett and segue to WCW, he was there and he was a monster. And the Wars and WWE and SummerSlam 94, he was always around. And so a big part of
just around in the mix, right?
Probably with a handful of guys in all those moments in that 15 years, like and skyrocketed to that main event. And you know, he's and just like Jess, man, we used to make fun of Luger. We did not like his work rate. We didn't know what work rate was back then, but we did not like him. We felt even back then he was just kind of, he was never involved in any 5-star matches and seemed to like he could easily check out and made it look fake and was very clunky and messed up promos. But he parlayed a hell of a career off his body and everything that he did. And he was part of some great matches and made money for a lot of people. So good for him for actually not being totally committed to the business and being a bit selfish and making his money and being jumped and controlling his own career. You know, and a guy who's seemingly changed his ways, but absolutely deserves a legacy and a huge part of wrestling, I think. But yeah, that's Luger.
That's says it all, man. So for audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Google Podcast, or watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. On social media, give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at O.W.P 2019 or at Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. This is Dave, Jess, and Craig with the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one.